Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to the first I Am a Story event brought to you by Jefferson County Library. Come on in. We have some good stories for you today. We've got quite a few, but if you just want to sit for a few of them, that's fine too. All right. Okay, so I'm a Story. In about December 2020, the staff at Jefferson County Library was having a meeting, and we were trying to figure out what we could do to help the community and how it was feeling. This was the first winter we were heading into COVID, and we wanted to come up with an event that would help people humanize their neighbors and bring pride to the community of Jefferson County. So here we are. We thought, what do we do best? We do stories the best. That's what a library is about. And with this inception, we began gathering stories. We later got a grant through the American Rescue Plan Act. We also garnered support from the Jefferson County Historical Society, KWSO 91.1, and the Latino Community Association in order to put this event on that covered as much of the community as we could. Tonight, you are going to hear from 6 very brave Jefferson County community members, because they are breaking the ice on this event that we hope to garner enough attention to that it keeps going. We want to keep gathering stories, and we want to keep telling them. So, without further ado, I bring you the theme tonight. You cannot judge a book by its cover. And your presenters are John Crispin, Jennifer Grant, Inez Rodriguez, Susan Stovall, Victor Pedrosa, and Gretchen Schlee. Let's give them a hand of support.
Hello. Hi. My name's John Crispin. So my story pretty much started, for me, I never really experienced much of people looking at me in a different light when I was growing up, because in my community, everybody was pretty much the same. But when I came out to Oregon about 10 years ago with family, we moved out here to just start something new with our kids, and our stepson wanted to be closer up to his family, so we came out this way. But immediately upon arriving in Oregon, I started working for a retail company selling appliances, furniture, and there was a gentleman that was a long-standing customer of the store that was always there buying merchandise from the same person all the time. Our manager, he was at the store for maybe 10 years before I was, and they had a great relationship. But I was the person that took care of all the services and everything for his appliances. But he never knew who I was, and we never really met. We only talked on the phone. And then eventually the store changed up some things and a lot of people left. I was the only person that stayed behind from the original crew. And this gentleman, his name was Guy. Very hard in his ways and very set in his ways, and he would not deal with people he was unfamiliar with. So he would not talk to any of the new people that came in, only with me on the phone. Over time, he was getting increasingly frustrated with everybody there, and he would talk to me only, and I would settle everything for him. Eventually, he said, "I want to come down to the store so I could meet you." I said, "Great, I'll be here all day." and I was waiting for him, and I knew that he was a rancher. I knew he, worked with farm animals, and a truck came in with a horse trailer on it. I thought to myself, this has to be Guy. I'm going to greet him right away. It was our store culture to greet people immediately. So when he came in, I walked towards the front door with my hand extended to greet him, and I asked him, "Are you Guy?" He immediately looked at me, and he crossed his arms, and he said, "I'm here to see John." And I say, "I'm John." And he goes, "I'm here to see the other John." "I'm the only John that works here. There's got to be a mistake. You don't sound like the John. You don't look like the John that I talked to on the phone." "Well, why is that?" And he was very blunt, "Because of the color of my skin." We talked. We shook hands eventually, and we became really good friends. And it was that was the first experience really that I noticed in my mind, in my life, where it was blatant and right in my face. And when Gretchen asked me about a story about judging a book by its color, I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about, because I've had that since then. I've recognized it more and more so, because I don't speak with an accent, and I don't sound like I'm from here. So when people meet me, they think something else. But once they do meet me, then they realize that this is who I am. And I'm just John. And that is my story.
Hi, my name's Jennifer, and this is my story. So when my sister and I were born, we were born on drugs. People see me and my attitude and the way I give back to the community, and they think, man, she must have had a really great life. Well, that's the furthest thing from the truth. We were brutally abused by my mom's boyfriends. Saw my mom get stabbed to death when I was 5, and they brought her back through multiple blood transfusions and surgeries and stuff. And so my sister and I were put in foster care for about a month, and then my uncles were always our savior. They would always come and get us no matter where we lived. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning and we were in trouble, we could call them collect, and if it took them 3 hours to get there, they would be there for us. So that abuse ran till I was about almost 11, and then my mom met my stepdad, and we actually had a family for 1 year. It was the most amazing thing in the world. But then he was an emotional abuser and alcoholic, so the abuse ran pretty deep. I moved out when I was 16 because of it, because they were borrowing money from me all the time. I was working full-time during high school, and so I vowed to never be like them. I said I would never be that person. I was a straight-A student, 25 out of 350 kids in my class graduating in Nevada. And then I got a Dewey back in 2004, and I had lost 8 people that were really close to me, my dad being one of them, his parents, my mom's dad, an uncle, and 3 really close friends. And so I actually begged God to take me. I didn't want to live anymore. I was so broken, so tormented in my own self-being and self-worth, and the anxiety ran so deep. I was such an introvert. I was scared to open up to people because I'd been hurt so many times in my life. But I did about 3 years of drugs, and I got clean about 2007. And when I was ready to come out of that dark hole, I just called to Jesus, and he said, "Oh girl, I have been waiting this day for you. I have waited. Why do you think I kept you here? Because you are a walking testimony of no pain is ever in vain. I will use the horriment and the terror for good, because now I stand here as a walking testimony about the changes we can make in life." I mean, although I was in an abusive marriage for 8 years with my kiddo's dad, and it took me 6 years to get the courage to leave, and I had to get a restraining order, and things were really, really bad. I was scared for my life, but now I am so much stronger than I ever have been. I'm not scared of him anymore. I only needed the restraining order for a year, and God has just built me up through my trauma therapy, through helping others, and just being a light in this dark world is something that we all can do. We choose our attitude. That's the most significant decision you can make in life, is choice of attitude. And so I urge everyone to smile at a stranger, introduce yourself to a veteran, tell them thank you. Just be the change you want to see in this world, because it all starts right here. And if you haven't dealt with the pain or forgiven others, because you can't be forgiven unless you forgive, and that's huge. And you don't forget, but you learn to live with it, and to be able to have the courage to come up and be vulnerable and not cry. I used to cry when I shared my story with people. This is just a tidbit of what my sister and I and my mom went through, But before she died, she was clean for 5 years. So I actually had my mom back in a way that I'd never known before. And so my sister and I, they live down here now, my sissy, my sister, and everybody. And they've been my rock. And they've been my main supporters and friends and family who live here as well. And now I'm raising my kids. I've broken the bondage that used to torment me every day. And I'm raising my kids in a way that I never knew growing up. And so I take that home, and I take God at the root of it, and I just let his light and his voice speak through me. And if I have somebody on my heart, I text them or I call them and say, hey, I'm thinking about you, because you know what? That could change their day in an instant. We all have that power within us to be who we want to be in this world and be the change we want to see. And so I urge everybody to show kindness, courage, love, and respect, and just give. Give of your time, give of yourself, and give without expecting anything in return. And that's the key, is do it because it's what you want and that's who you are. So just be strong. You're braver than you think, smarter than you know, and more beautiful than you can imagine. So life is a gift. Use each breath to the best. This is my story. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo soy Inés y esta es mi historia. Nací en la ciudad de Mérida, Yucatán, la ciudad blanca, en México. Vengo de una familia de clase media baja, en donde las tradiciones son primordiales, son principales. Lo que es la familia, lo que es el matrimonio. Mi padre, que en paz descanse, Luis, mi madre Margarita, mis hermanos menores, Luis y Margarita. Mi abuela, que es en la casa donde vivimos, se llamaba Joaquina, que en paz descanse. Vivimos con ella durante toda mi infancia, toda mi adolescencia, viví con ella. Mi infancia fue lo mejor que yo tengo. De los recuerdos, los juegos activos, todo lo que yo viví en esa infancia son juegos inolvidables, recuerdos inolvidables. Durante mi adolescencia no puedo decir lo mismo, fue un poco más reprimida, pero venía un evento muy importante, el evento de mi quinceañera. Ahí tuve que ayudar a mamá a trabajar, a vender comida para ayudarle y hacer mi quinceañera. Esto no fue solo posible con la ayuda de mamá, sino también tuve que ayudar mis primos, mis tíos, mis padrinos, toda la familia tuvo que ayudar para que esto fuera posible. Un año después conocí al que ahora es mi esposo, se llama Pedro, y él quiso que fuéramos novios y mi esposo y mi papá me dijo que no, que eso no era posible porque yo tenía que seguir con mis estudios y que un novio en ese momento me iba quitar la mentalidad de continuar mis estudios. Pero sin embargo, a los 16 años sí fui novia de Pedro, y después de un año de ser novia de él, él me dice, ya estoy listo para venirme a los Estados Unidos. Y yo no lo creí. Yo dije, no puede ser posible. Pero fue posible hasta que ya lo vi subir en el autobús. Y aunque suene dramático, yo sufrí porque yo estaba muy enamorada de él. Y eso repercutió en mi estado de ánimo, en mi forma de ser. Yo siempre tan alegre, tan jovial, tan dedicada a socializar y a divertirme. Sin embargo, la ayuda de mamá, de papá, de mi familia, los amigos y mi preparación para continuar mis estudios técnicos de belleza, salí adelante. Y también, un año después, conocí a un joven llamado Luis Manuel, y él quiso que fuéramos novios. Yo un diciembre decidí terminar mi relación por teléfono con el que ahora es mi esposo y decidí ser novia de Luis Manuel. Más adelante, en noviembre formalizamos mi noviazgo con Luis Manuel. En enero me estaba casando por el civil y en abril por la iglesia. Fue un matrimonio como cualquier otro. con altas y bajas, pero pude salir adelante con todo eso. Sin embargo, 5 años y medio después, él fallece. Un golpe duro para mí. ¿Y qué pasa? Otra vez, la familia, los amigos, ahí ayudándome. Y una amiga me recomendó en una escuela privada y empecé a trabajar como asistente de maestra. Eso también me ayudó a continuar y a seguir adelante. Mi esposo, Pedro, que él ya estaba aquí, en este país, hizo su vida, se casó, tuvo 2 hijos, pero también con el tiempo su esposa fallece. Y entonces él, con el tiempo, me contacta. Para ese entonces yo estaba trabajando en la escuela. En esa escuela trabajé durante 9 años. Y esta historia que estoy contando es una historia basada en el amor, en los sueños, en los ideales que tiene uno, ¿verdad? Yo nunca pensé estar en otro país, siempre me imaginé vivir con mi familia en mi país, pero algo surgió en mí, hizo que yo esté aquí. Y ya estando aquí, estoy aprovechando las oportunidades que me da la vida, las bendiciones que me da Dios. Soy voluntaria comunitaria, estoy participando en asociaciones sin fines de lucro como Latino Community, Family Resource Center, Family University, y concluyo con esto. ¿Qué harían ustedes por realizar sus sueños? Gracias.
Hi, my name is Susan and this is my story. With Claire back in 1989, when my girlfriend and I were looking for an activity for our daughters. There wasn't a whole lot going on in Madras at that time, so we did it the old-fashioned way and got the phone book out. First phone call, I had a lovely conversation with a woman, Caroline Kaiser, from Prineville, who owned, I gotta get it right because we changed the name, High Desert Dance Arts. And we enrolled our students, we went and observed a class, enrolled our girls, and we hauled them over every week for a year. We finished with a recital, and we were so amazed at the program that they offered in Prineville that we pretty much begged Caroline to come to Madras. She said, yes, I'll do a 2-week summer dance camp, which we held over at the Grange, where Eagle Bakery is now located. And that was so successful that again on bended knee, we said we would do anything to help you bring a studio to Madras. So she found a place, which was that little bakery right there. That's where we had our classes for a couple years, and we outgrew those quickly. So I'm an old stomping ground here. This was our home for many, many, many years. We now have the dance studio located in the old Episcopal Church across from Westside Elementary. So 33 years later, I can say how lucky I was to be a part of a very successful program. Caroline outgrew, she became so busy that she asked me, my story is about opportunity, came up, and she asked me if I would take over teaching the 4, 5, and 6-year-olds pre-ballet. I think I can do that. That's when my opportunity knocked. So I went and I flourished. My philosophy was, and I really truly believe that dance is such an opportunity for kids, and it translates into just bringing their thoughts and ideas and emotions into a creative outlet. It just does wonders for their confidence and their communication skills, their coordination, learning to appreciate music and movement and rhythm. And I always try to incorporate fun things in my class. And we just had a lovely time every week. And I had so much fun getting to know so many families in the community. One of the special things that I think was building the trust with my students, not only my students, but the parents. And a lot of times my little 4-year-olds were dropped off in my class, and it was the first time they were handed over to a teacher. So I had shy, quiet kids. I had boisterous and confident kids. Sometimes I think they could have taught class. But needless to say, we learned from the most basic skills and graduated on to learning ballet terminology, just little pliés and arabesques and grand battements and tendus, and we just had fun. They became little dancers. So we always finished up our year with a big recital. And I have a couple stories to tell because it goes to show you how proud, I've always felt like a proud mom after recital. We had one little girl who would never take her sweater off. She was so shy. She had her sweater buttoned clear up to the top button. And we used to perform at the Collage of Culture, and we were getting ready to go on stage. She had her costume on, she buttoned up her sweater, and right before she went on, she said, "Teacher, I want to take my sweater off." I said, "Really? Okay." So we took her sweater off. She got up on stage and she danced her heart out. And I looked over at her mom and dad. They were crying. I was crying, and we saw a star being born. It was amazing. And one other little dancer had a very bad case of stage fright right before recital. And we had to call mom backstage. We didn't know we were going to get that dancer on stage. And I really didn't care if they didn't dance or what. I wanted to get them on stage. Well, we found a ribbon, and she stood behind the curtains on the side. She had one end of the ribbon in her hand. We brought the dancer out. The curtains opened. The dancer had the other ribbon in her hand. The lights came on. She stood there. She just stood there, but she got on stage, and that was a successful story in my book for my little dancer. And I saw that happen year after year after year. So you can tell, that I fell in love with my dancers, and the best thing about my life was becoming a mother and a grandmother, but I have the privilege of loving many, many children here. And I know that the dance program has made a huge difference in so many lives. Some went on to dance in college, and some made careers out of their dance education. So very proud of our program. But getting back to opportunity, I was blessed with an opportunity. And I hope that whether you're volunteering or if it's your career, when opportunity knocks on your door, don't hesitate to open it up. It might be scary, focus, be patient, educate yourself, be curious, and just quite possibly you might create an opportunity that changes so many kids' lives. I know that I was blessed. Thank you, and this is my story, and if I had a cover for my story, this says it all, because so many of these little ballet slippers came through my class. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victor Pedroza. I'm from San Francisco, California. I've been living here in Madras almost 7 years now. Been here in Madras. I want to share a part of my story testimony. In 2014, I was in the city where I was born and raised, San Francisco, where I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I was shot 3 times. I caught two bullets to the head, 1 bullet to my back. After this happened, I thought, I'm gonna die. They took me into the hospital, and that night there was a lot of bodies. It was New Year's Eve, and it was a rampage thing going on with gangs in the streets. And so what happened there was that once I left the hospital, thank God I'm still alive, all because of His grace and all because of His plan. So when I leave the hospital, I was raised in the city of San Francisco. My father was, you could say, a machista, so he raised me in a way of, taking always revenge, in my own hands, and I want to include that, we always seem to judge people from the outside, not looking at their hearts, at the inside, what they have been through and why they made these wrong decisions, and when I was released from the hospital, the first thing that I had on my mind was, first of all, when I was down on the ground and the ambulance took me in, they say, I seen the light, and I had an encounter with the Lord. So when I get to the hospital and the doctor, I remember he told me something. He said, Victor, when you leave the hospital, go buy yourself a lottery ticket because you're lucky. That's what he said. But I knew I wasn't lucky. It was God. So right when I left the hospital, next day in the morning, I had nothing but revenge in my mind. I said, this guy, he didn't kill me. So, I'm gonna go after him, because that's what I was taught and raised what to do, how to do it. And so, I started making phone calls the next day, looking for this person and doing my own little investigations. A couple weeks passed by, gang task force calls me in, and they put a lineup in front of me, and of course they pointed out the guy that did it, and I kind of knew. I said, okay, that's him. Yeah, it is him. And they told me, is this him? And I said, no, that's not him, because I wanted the revenge. So, the detective, he kind of just smiled and he said, that's him. I said, no, that's not him. So after that, I left the station, and already, having more knowledge about this person, I went ahead and started making plans. But another week and a half later, a couple weeks later, I get another phone call saying, we got the guy, and we locked, he's in prison, we got him. So I was kind of upset. I was upset because I was like, oh, they got to him before I did, and I didn't want that to happen, That's the way I was raised, I was brought up. One thing I've always said, two wrongs don't make a right. I've heard this from everywhere, and if we don't forgive, then God will not forgive us. We have to forgive to be forgiven. This is what I've learned. So 2018, I gave my life to the Lord, and now I look at life in a different way. I look at life with love because I have the Lord in my heart. So now what I'm asking the Lord for instead of revenge is, I've been praying for that day where I can see this person, he's still in prison, so I can see this person and look him in the eyes and go up to him, give him a hug, and tell him that I forgive him and that Jesus loves him. And that's what the power of forgiveness is. I want to add to this that when we forgive, it's not for them, it's for us. It's for us to let that go, to let it out. It's not for them. So I just want to share, my testimony about forgiveness. God bless you all.
Hi, my name is Gretchen, and this is my story. Now, I know that all of you come to the library and read books. And every time you pick up a book, You get to that point in the book where you're like, this could go bad or this could go good. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to keep reading because I want to know what happened. Well, in 1994, I was working in a Hagwon, which is an English institute in South Korea. And I was loving my job. I was teaching all ages. I had businessmen who were trying to learn business English. And I had middle schoolers and high schoolers who wanted to know how to do grammar. And I wanted to know too, but I was teaching them anyways. And then I had 3- and 4-year-old class. Oh my, I had 12 of them. And I had one student in particular whose name was Hyun. And he did not want to sit down. He didn't want to do anything except for just play with the toys and run around in circles. And so most of the time, I let him. And it was a very challenging class for me to have. But one time, the staff and I decided, hey, there's a new pizza joint in town. Let's go check it out. It was called Pizza Hut, but it wasn't Pizza Hut. And so we climbed in the taxis and we went down the street and we got to the place, we got out, we walked in the door, and the owner met us. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad to see all of you Migooks here, all you Americans, because now everybody will come to my restaurant. And I looked around the restaurant and I thought, well, it's pretty crowded already. I'm not sure where he's gonna put, 8 of us. Well then, he cleared a table in the middle of the room, a nice round table, and he says, here, you guys all sit here. Now, we're like, okay, sure, we're looking around. I mean, it's pretty crowded in this restaurant. So we are sitting there, we make our order, and as soon as our order's done, all of a sudden, the whole restaurant hears this scream, Samsung-nim! Samsung-nim! And I'm like, uh-oh. I recognized the voice, and then I got hit by a 40-pound force of nature. And I turned down, and there was Hyun. I was like, oh great, we've picked the restaurant that Hyun's father owns. Awesome! And his father comes running over, and he says, are you Hyun's Songseung-nim teacher? And I was like, yes. He's like, oh, we are so excited about all the English that Hyun is learning. I went, really? He says, yes, in fact, my son is going to perform for you. And by this time, I'm about ready to crawl under the table. So he picks up his kid and puts him in the middle of the table, of our table. And he turns to the whole restaurant, he says, everyone be quiet. My son is now going to speak English, the English that he has been learning from his teacher who teaches him at this Hagwon. And I'm really dying, and I'm just looking at all of my coworkers, and they're just smirking. And Dad looks at Hyun, he says, Hyun, are you ready? Hyun goes, yes. All eyes are on Hyun. He puffs out his chest, and he takes a deep breath, and he says, everybody sit down! There was a moment. And then all of my coworkers stood up and started applauding. And everybody in the restaurant stood up and started applauding. And they are applauding, and I just want to crawl under the table. But I look at Hyun, who's standing on the table, and he is beaming, just beaming. Look at me, I speak English. And that's my story.
Thank you, everyone, for sitting in this sweltering heat while we told some stories. I want to bring up our storytellers one more time, and let's give them a big round of applause.
Yeah, be the change.
Thank you for listening. You have now officially become part of I Am a Story Project just by being here. We are going to continue to gather stories. Please come into the library or
next time you see Gretchen out and about, grab her. She loves to record stories. All right, I want to say thank you to the American Rescue Plan Act grant that funded a significant portion of this project, and all the support we got from the Jefferson County Historical Society, KWSO 91.1, and the Latino Community Association. Also, we have some merchandise for sale. We have some super cool t-shirts, and I won't give too much away, but if you know about the t-shirts and what's on them, you have a significant discount coming to you. Also, we have free water bottles. There's a little bit of a catch, but stop by the table and find out how you can get a free water bottle. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we want to hear your stories. Stop by the library, please. Have a good night.